The most rudimentary use of an addition formula in Microsoft Excel is to add numbers, same as a calculator. But this calculator is incomparable to what we may think as a calculator. So I open an Excel workbook, I click on cell B2 and type equal sign. Just after that I type the equal sign, it tells Excel that I want to create a formula. For example, 2 plus 10 plus 7. So here, as soon as I press Enter key on my keyboard, the result appears. When I enter a formula in a cell, the formula also appears in the formula bar. So to confirm the formula, and instead of simply pressing Enter key, we can click the check button next to formula bar. To discard the changes, I can press Escape key on the keyboard or click the cross button next to, again, formula bar. And finally, I press Enter and the result is 19. To edit what's in a cell, in this case this addition formula, we can either double click on the cell, so what's in the cell gets disclosed, or just when the desired cell is as the active cell, we can go to formula bar and make the changes. After editing a cell and to confirm changes, pressing the Enter key will select the cell below the cell we are currently working in. This is the default behavior in Excel and it allows us to quickly work our way down a list when entering data into cells. If we hold the Control key while pressing Enter, the selection will not move to the next cell. Instead, the cell that we just edited will remain selected. Please note that the cell we are editing is referred to as the active cell. So Control plus Enter keeps the selection on the active cell after entering data or a formula. Now let's go to Cells Workbook. As you see, we have 12 months in Monthly Cells worksheet with numerical values in several cells, and we would like to add these numbers together. We can add up the values for January to December from cell C3 to C4 by typing the addition formula into cell C16 in this spreadsheet. Here, I type equal sign, then C3 plus C4 plus C5 and so on. The fastest way to confirm the formula is pressing Enter key and done. I've started typing the formula into cell C16. Notice how the cells in my formula are highlighted with different unique colors as I type cell locations in this simple addition formula so that it shows which cell is related to which value in column C. Note that Excel doesn't mind if we type the formula in the lowercase, as you can see. Excel will automatically convert each letter uppercase after we press Enter. After pressing Enter key, the formula will be stored in the cell and the result of the formula will be displayed on the cell as well as in the formula bar. The great thing about adding up cells with cell locations or cell references in this way is that the formula will always show the current value of the sum of these cells. If anytime we change any of the values in cells C3, C4, C5 to C15, the value in C16 will change immediately to show the correct sum of these cells. The alternative to do the addition with cell locations is to type the values themselves, as I do now in cell C17. 81 plus 78 plus 75 plus the rest to 55 and Enter. Now if I make any changes, for example if I change 70 to 75, the formula in C16 gets updated, but it's not the case in cell C17. This is a trick of the trade for assigning the cell locations. Once we have a large number of cells to be added, this approach to adding up cells becomes really difficult to manage. For that reason, we would prefer the next method of adding up cells in Excel, which uses a function to do the addition for us. An Excel function is a predefined computation that simplifies creating a formula that performs a complex calculation. Excel contains more than 500 functions. Here we're gonna use sum function. Let's go. The sum function is a much more efficient way to add up cells. It can be used to add up individual cells, as we did in the last example, as well as a range of cells simply by specifying the first and the last cell to be added up. This function is particularly powerful because it can be used to write a simple formula to add up hundreds or thousands of cells. If we look at our earlier example, we could use sum function, which would achieve the same result as our earlier example. Let's try. First, I press Ctrl Z or click on Undo button here on the title bar to go back. We can also click on cell C16 and then press Delete key on the keyboard. To insert the sum function in this example and to sum the values in column C, I type equal sign in cell C16, then I type SUM and left parenthesis. Now, here I can have different approaches with different benefits in the case of inserting arguments. Let's try. I can type the values themselves, 81, 78, and the rest. Finally, enter key and done. Cell C17, and again I type SUM and left parenthesis. As we did for the previous example, I use cell locations instead of values. So C3, C4, C5, and the rest. I know you see the different highlights over the cells as I type. Dark blue over C3 and dark brown over C4. Again, enter key and done. The result both in C16 and C17 are the same as you see. Typing the cell locations is not the only way to insert the values into the formula. I click on C18 and try to use the third way to insert argument into some function. Here I again type equal sign, then SUM and left parenthesis. I left click on cell C3 and drag it to select the range C3 to C15 with the mouse. This drag and drop selects C3 to C15. Now press the enter key and done. The result is 800. Another way is to type the cell range. Here I again type the equal sign, SUM and left parenthesis, then C3 colon C15. These two references are separated by a colon. The colon tells Excel to include all the cells between these start and end points. Here C3 to C15. Note that if one or more of the cells are empty or contain text rather than a number, Excel will simply ignore those values when calculating the result. I double-click on cell C18. Notice how the cells included in the formula are highlighted. This is a useful way to check if our formula is using a correct range of cells for its calculations. This formula adds up all the cells from C3 to C15 inclusively. This method could be used just as easily to add up several thousand cells. Here in yearly cells worksheet, 36 values are listed for 3 years. Naturally, if I start typing each cell location into some function, it sounds humorous. The best way is to select from C3 to E14 by left mouse click and enter, or just type the beginning cell, here C3, colon, and the ending cell, which is E14. Enter key and done. Let's suppose you need to update your formula to include 2019. I will explain how to do this with again different approaches. First, we can double-click on H16 and make the changes directly into the cell. I select and highlight E and change it to F. We can see that as soon as E is changed to F, the highlight over the cell range is extended to include the new ones. Enter key and the new result. We can also do the same things in the formula bar after clicking on cell H16 to be the active cell. I press the escape key to discard the changes. The handiest way to update the formula is to double-click on cell H16 and then, as the blue highlight over the cell range appears, I click and drag the square at bottom corner of this highlight to cell F14 and drop. As soon as I drop the mouse click and press enter key, the formula will be updated. We can also use sum to add up a row of numbers. For example, I click on G3 and again type equal sign, then SUM and left parenthesis. I select C3 to F3 and press enter. The result in G3 shows the amount of cells in the first month of 4 consecutive years. Are you looking for a way to shorten the time you spend to add up next rows? I mean, for February to December with no extra effort, after I create a formula, I can copy it to other cells. so there is no need to rewrite the same formula. I can either copy the formula or use the autofill feature to copy the formula to adjacent cells. The Excel autofill feature can be used to populate a range of cells with either a repeat value, a series of values, formulas, and also functions or just the cell format. So let's select G3 and you'll see the small square known as the fill handle. I move the mouse pointer over the fill handle, click, and drag it down until I've highlighted cells from G4 to G14. Now I release the mouse button and Excel automatically fills in the formula. When we copy the formula, we need to ensure that the cell references are correct. Now if I click on any of these autofilled cells, I can check if the formula is correct. Finally, we can add up more than one range of cells at a time. Our previous sum examples have only added up one range at a time. Here, I would like to add up several ranges. For example, I would like to add up cells from different years and different months. I click on H17 and again type equal sign, then SUM and left parenthesis. Now I can select different cells and ranges, C3 to C5, comma, C12 to C14, comma, F3 to F5, comma, and finally F12 to F14. You can also add individual cells, D3, D14. Enter and the result is revealed. As you can see, this formula specifies 4 separate cell ranges and 2 separate cells, all included in the same sum function. Using sum function across multiple worksheets. Up to now, we just talked about using sum function only in one worksheet of a workbook, but sometimes we need to sum a particular cell or range of cells on multiple worksheets. We can get this easily with a 3D or three-dimensional sum. This is particularly helpful in situations where we have a single sheet for each month and we need to total them on a summary sheet. In my next example, I'm gonna exactly do the math for this type of thing. To do so, I open my weeks workbook. You can see that there are at least 3 worksheets here. I'd like to sum, for example, the first weeks of the first quarter of the year. I can easily do it for the rest of the weeks for each month. So I go to my weekly sales worksheet. Let's click on cell C2 and start typing sum function. After typing the left parenthesis, I go to my desired cell in January worksheet to fill the first argument. It's C3. Then I press plus and then in February worksheet, I can click on C3, then plus again and C3 in March. As soon as I press enter key, the result is here. It's now much easier to calculate the rest. It's by autofill feature that I lately talked about. I just click on autofill handle and drag it to fill the rest with this sum function. To see if this autofill feature works correctly, I can check it, for example, using formula bar. The simplest type of an Excel addition formula is made up of the equal sign followed by 2 or more numbers with plus sign as the addition operator in between them. This simple addition has been discussed through this tutorial using multiple examples, as well as the sum function, which adds all the numbers in a range of cells and returns the result of the addition. Here, I'm going to discuss about some of the best practices for working with simple addition and the sum function. Please note that much of this can be applied to working with other functions as well. Let's go to sales volume worksheet in my sales workbook and examine the differences between these two as well as the pros and cons of using them instead of each other. In this worksheet, I have listed 4 types of formulas for simple addition and sum function from B10 to B13, as well as their results from C10 to C13. The values in US dollars are also written in front of these 6 months as our time periods. If you look at the cells C10 to C13, you can see that the results are obtained using 4 practices. While you can enter formulas in this way using simply numbers or this way using cell locations and get fully accurate results, these methods are error-prone and they tend to cause errors under several circumstances. Please note that along with this part, I will use Ctrl plus grave accent sign, which is a shortcut to show formulas, which is a button with the same name in the formulas tab and formula editing group. As you can see, we have roughly large values here in column C. And imagine we are trying to enter these values like this in cell C10. Here, it's easy to check and correct the values. But what if we have hundreds of such values? It's much easier to put these values in individual cells and use a sum formula with cell locations. In this case, formulas and functions in cell C11 to C13 are better options. You can also format the values when they are in cells, making them much more readable. For example, we can go to Form tab, then Number group, and add currency marks, or format with a 1000 separator and also increase and decrease decimals. Suppose we have created a calculation using simple addition formulas, as you can see in cells C10 and C11. Maybe we have come to a conclusion that the revenue in April is mistakenly typed and we need some time for further investigation in our documents. So we change what's in C6 to a text string like NA. Let's see what happens in the results. Cell C11 displays hash value error from referencing text instead of numbers, and the result in cell C13 gets updated because the value in C6 is missing. Some function will ignore text values and give you the sum of just the numeric values. But why C12 and C10 didn't change? The reason is they are calculated based on the numbers, not based on the cell locations. So they are not linked to their original values. This, of course, causes other errors. If we delete a row or column, the formula will not update to exclude the deleted row, and it will return a hash ref error, where a sum function with cell locations will automatically update. For example, I delete row 7 this way, and cell C10 returns the error, and the result in cell C12 updates itself. If we insert a row or column, the simple addition formulas will not update to include the added row, where a sum function with cell locations will automatically update. Of course, as long as the newly created row is not outside of the range referenced in the formula. This is especially important if we expect our formula to update and it doesn't. For example, I select row 6 and insert a new row in this way. So the new row is placed above April and below March. Please note that the newly created row is inside the range referenced in the formulas and functions. After filling the cell C6 with desired values like 500, for example, and pressing Enter key, we can see that only some function with cell locations remains error-free and automatically updates. The rest remain unacceptably untouched.